Hello everyone, welcome back to Anime Dreams. Today, we're diving into an exciting scenario. What if Naruko became a demigod's ally? Part 4. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer, the content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos, full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Let's jump right in. Far above the Empire State Building hovered a magnificent, shimmering landmass containing an entire city, the fabled home of the Olympian deities. Its marble palaces gleamed like starlight, housing the grand halls of the gods, goddesses, and other celestial beings. Within the most resplendent chamber of all, the throne room, two divine figures conversed in hushed but serious tones. One, seated upon a high throne, bore a neatly groomed black and gray beard and long, flowing hair that fell past his shoulders. His commanding presence was accentuated by his sharp, electric blue eyes, which seemed to contain the spark of storms themselves. The other deity, standing beside him, was equally imposing, with radiant golden hair bound neatly at the back and eyes that glimmered like the sun at its zenith. Both wore robes of spun gold, draped in the classical Greek style, which underscored their grandeur and rank within the pantheon. It was late, the full moon hung high above Olympus, casting a silver glow through the open columns of the chamber. The golden-haired deity, the god of the sun, sighed softly, weary from the endless duties of illuminating the world below. Yet despite his fatigue, he knew no one else could shoulder this sacred responsibility. "Apollo, my son," Zeus began, his voice resonant and commanding, "it is already known throughout Olympus that I once fathered a child, though in doing so I broke a law of my own making and bore the consequences for it." Apollo, who had been quietly composing poetry in his mind, straightened with mild surprise at his father's somber tone. He often endured these lengthy discourses but seldom found them this serious. Clearing his throat, Apollo raised an eyebrow. "Father, why summon me at such an hour? I could have been finishing a new hymn. Perhaps you'd like to hear it?" Zeus fixed him with a stern glance that needed no words. Apollo promptly fell silent, knowing better than to test his father's patience. Zeus continued, lowering his voice. "There is a truth I have only recently uncovered, a secret even Olympus has yet to learn. I am not the only one among the three great lords to have broken the ancient vow." Apollo blinked, startled, his sunlit eyes widening. "Truly? Which of my uncles dared this? Surely not Hades, he is far too withdrawn for such things. Poseidon then?" Zeus's expression hardened, and Apollo immediately realized he had guessed correctly. "Poseidon," Zeus said at last. Apollo's brow furrowed thoughtfully. "So the vow has been broken again." He hesitated before asking, "And what of the child? What is to become of?" Zeus exhaled deeply and turned his gaze to the glowing moon, the silver light reflecting in his eyes. "The child does not live within our world. She resides in another realm entirely." Apollo, curious as ever, tapped his chin. "If she is in another universe, she cannot disturb this one. Perhaps my uncle's consequence is simply that he cannot reach her." Zeus inclined his head slightly. "Yet it is foretold that this child will one day cross into our world. When that day comes, she will not be like other mortals. The Moirai themselves have spoken, her destiny is of great significance." Apollo straightened fully, sensing the weight of his father's words. "And you wish for me to watch over her?" "Yes," Zeus replied firmly. "This girl, this Naruko, is to be safeguarded. Her presence will shape events yet unseen." Apollo gave a slow nod, though his eyes betrayed a glimmer of disbelief at such an unusual request. "Very well. When Naruko comes to our world, I will keep vigilant watch over her," he said solemnly, before turning to leave. Zeus leaned back into his throne, his hand resting thoughtfully against his chin as Apollo departed. This child must be extraordinary indeed, the sun god mused inwardly. Questions crowded his mind, but he chose to set them aside for now. He was almost out of the throne room when a familiar figure appeared, stepping into his path. Recognizing her instantly, Apollo arched an eyebrow and offered a faint smile. "What brings you here, little sister?" he asked lightly, though his curiosity was genuine. Current time. The three young adventurers were currently unbound, standing in awkward silence as they waited for the goddess of the hunt to make her appearance. The only girl in the group, Naruko, kept scanning the tent for anything that might be useful later if polite conversation failed. Percy was also looking around, but he was more captivated by the decor than by plans for escape. The tent was warm and inviting, with animal pelts hanging along the walls. In the center, a golden brazier gave off a soft glow. Naruko, however, was different from the others. She wasn't paying attention to the surroundings at all. Instead, She was staring intently at a purple and silver table. Behind it stood a polished oak stand displaying a large silver bow shaped like gazelle horns. She assumed it belonged to the goddess of the hunt. Her eyes were sharp with thought, and her hands were clenched in quiet determination, showing how focused she was. Apollo, forced to wait outside, grumbled quietly but didn't mind too much. It gave him a chance to talk to some nearby hunters. "How long do you think she'll make us wait?" "I thought we were important, judging by the way the huntress spoke about us," Percy asked, glancing toward the lone table in the center. A silver-colored cat sat on it, staring at them with unblinking eyes that made him nervous. "Artemis will come soon, Percy. She's probably busy with other matters right now," the daughter of Athena reasoned, her eyes also following the cat. "I say we wait a little longer. Apollo could help us if anything goes wrong," Naruko suggested, though it was clear everyone understood that leaving wouldn't be simple. The three teens were growing increasingly anxious with each passing moment. Meow. The cat's sudden movement caught their attention. After 30 minutes of stillness, it gracefully leapt from its perch and landed softly on the floor, its silver-gray eyes locked on the group. Before they could react, a brilliant golden light filled the tent, forcing them to shield their eyes. As the glow faded, the three adventurers uncovered their faces and were struck by the sight before them. In the center of the room stood a tall, poised young girl no older than 16, with shoulder-length raven black hair framing her striking face. Her silver-gray eyes were sharp and commanding, and she exuded an aura of authority. Naruko, however, met her gaze with unflinching determination. The young goddess wore sleek black leggings and a silver tunic that shimmered in the light. She turned her attention toward Percy, narrowing her eyes slightly, signaling curiosity about the blonde-haired boy. "I am Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon," the goddess introduced herself with a calm, melodic voice. Even Naruko's rising emotions were slightly tempered by the grace in her tone. She fixed her gaze on Naruko. "You, child of both Poseidon and my former rival, Aura, dare to enter my domain knowing the history between us?" Before Naruko could respond, Artemis raised a hand to signal silence. "You are either very bold or exceptionally courageous. I hope it is the latter." "You cannot judge my mother based on old stories," Naruko said firmly, her voice full of passion and determination. She restrained herself from moving impulsively, keeping her composure despite her emotions. Artemis turned her attention to Annabeth, who blinked in surprise at being addressed next. "Daughter of Athena, why have you all come into my hunting grounds? Surely you are the most knowledgeable among your group," the goddess said. Percy and the other boy exchanged confused glances but were ignored by Artemis, leaving them to simmer in quiet frustration. "We are on a quest," Annabeth explained carefully. "We needed to come to Colorado to obtain an item essential to completing it." Artemis studied her carefully, then shifted her gaze to the other young hero. "Is that true, lightning thief?" she asked, her tone steady but piercing. "It is true we're here on a quest, but I did not take the lightning bolt," Percy responded quickly. Artemis's eyes narrowed, clearly skeptical of his words. "Because of this situation, my huntresses and I must prepare for challenges rather than focusing on the hunt," she replied, her tone calm yet firm. "That's exactly why we're on this quest. We need to retrieve the bolt and ensure it is returned safely so no conflict arises," Percy explained, pointing to their group for emphasis. Artemis paused thoughtfully before leaving the tent briefly. Moments later, she returned, bringing Apollo with her. He stumbled slightly as he entered, much to his own surprise and slight annoyance. "Okay, Apollo, tell me why you are accompanying these young adventurers," Artemis said, fixing her brother with a sharp gaze. "And why tell them about the lightning bolt? It was not taken by Hades." Apollo shrugged, earning a sigh from Artemis as she pinched the bridge of her nose in mild frustration. "Artemis, why did?" "We'll discuss your personal concerns with me later," Artemis interrupted, much to Naruko's growing frustration. Naruko crossed her arms and pouted silently, willing to wait as long as the current matter was resolved promptly. Sighing, Artemis looked at her sister, Naruko, who was now brushing off the dirt she had collected from the ground. Artemis gave her a questioning look, and Naruko responded with a bright smile, ruffling Artemis's dark, glistening hair, much to Artemis's annoyance. "Easy there, little sis. Some things are for me to know and for you not to worry about," Naruko said gently, lightly tapping Artemis on the nose. Artemis swung playfully at her sister's hand and shot a sharp glare at her. "Why is it so hard for you to be serious? The world is in peril, and you act like a child in a candy store," Artemis exclaimed, which only made Naruko chuckle at her sister's dramatic expression. "Don't be upset. Here's a haiku to cheer you up," Naruko declared, holding her hands out in a grand gesture. Artemis gave her a deadpan look, knowing her sister would continue regardless of her protests. Green grass breaks through snow. Artemis is very annoyed. I am so amazing. Everyone grimaced at Naruko's playful attempt at poetry, none more than Artemis herself. That's not a haiku. The last line only has 4 syllables, she pointed out. You should change it to Naruko is clever. Can't do, that's 6 syllables, Naruko said, pausing before adjusting the last line. I am so brilliant. She smiled proudly, pleased with the revision. Excuse me, but if we're done with this, may we continue our quest? Annabeth interjected. Both divine beings turned toward her. Yes, you can wait outside, Naruko said cheerfully. Except you, Naruko. I doubt you want to leave just yet, Artemis added, arms crossed. Absolutely. Naruko replied, excitement barely contained. Her 2 companions shared supportive glances before stepping outside the tent. It was clear the discussion ahead was private. Silence fell for a few moments. Artemis finally spoke. How frustrated are you with me right now? She asked cautiously. Words can't describe it, Naruko admitted. If I were even a year younger, I would have acted impulsively. That's reassuring. You're growing into maturity. But I wonder. Could you truly challenge me? Artemis teased. Naruko looked shocked before meeting her sister's determined gaze. What do you mean? Naruko asked, her voice confident. I am arguably one of the strongest in my world. Why would this be different? You can stop pretending. We know you don't have access to all your powers yet, specifically your 6 paths abilities, Artemis revealed. Naruko's eyes widened with astonishment. We know about your previous experiences in your world, and we know you're destined for greatness. I knew something was off that night. It wasn't just ordinary exhaustion, it was my more powerful abilities being sealed. But how? Naruko muttered. A soft cough drew her attention to the sun god. I'll simplify it, this universe is different. Chakra exists, but without a chakra tree equivalent, your sage arts won't work fully. Nature energy is mundane here. Even your 9 tails abilities are limited. Some of this is due to your inherited powers from your mother, and some modifications were made to ensure safety, Apollo explained. Naruko watched as Apollo moved with precision, his actions calculated and careful. Artemis sighed. My sister won't admit it, but she acted out of concern for your potential. We all agreed to limit your powers until you arrived, Artemis said. 3 of you knew? Naruko asked curiously. Zeus, of course. He may not look it, but he is knowledgeable, Apollo added, eyes narrowing as he noticed Naruko's necklace. Who gave you this? Poseidon, Naruko replied, instinctively holding the necklace for comfort. Apollo nodded toward Artemis. Little sister, whose necklace is that? Aura, she answered without hesitation. You're likely familiar with these types of necklaces, but yours is extraordinary. It contains your mother's essence, her powers and presence, Apollo explained. Naruko gazed at it with newfound respect and awe. Mom! Why would she entrust me with something so valuable? Naruko whispered. Because you are important to her, and she would do anything to ensure your safety, Artemis said gently. She then stepped closer to Naruko. Naruko, I do not harbor resentment toward you, nor do I hold it against your mother anymore. Back then, tensions were high, and actions were taken in haste. I am truly sorry for my part, Artemis said, kneeling with a hand over her heart in a gesture of sincerity. Naruko studied her carefully, then smiled softly. I forgive you, Artemis. Though I'm not sure I can be around you just yet. And my mother. She is the one who truly deserves forgiveness, she added, kneeling to meet Artemis's eyes. They shared a nod of mutual understanding. Can we move on before I start getting emotional? A cheerful voice interrupted. Both stood and turned to Apollo, who wore a mock expression of sadness. There's one more thing we must discuss, Apollo continued. Naruko tilted her head in curiosity. You may not know this, but I am also the god of prophecies, Apollo explained. And you, Naruko, are part of another prophecy. What? Me again? Naruko asked in disbelief. Yes, lucky you, Apollo said with a grin. This prophecy says you will either become an Olympian or a Titan. But I'm only a demigod, Naruko protested. You are much more than that. You're a god, but your full powers are temporarily inaccessible. Think of this as a trial. Eventually, you'll regain your abilities, could be soon, could be years from now, Artemis clarified. Becoming a Titan. That wouldn't be good, right? Naruko asked cautiously. It would be better to become an Olympian, yes. But not all titans are bad, your mother is proof of that, Artemis explained. This is a lot to process, Naruko murmured. True, but look on the bright side, you're going to be even more remarkable. Apollo added, his energy lifting the mood. We've kept the others waiting long enough. There's still a quest to complete, the world depends on it. Naruko, you have less than a week to find Zeus's master bolt and return it before the summer solstice. Even traveling by car, it would take less than a day, Artemis informed her. Plenty of time, Apollo agreed. Unfortunately, I cannot join you for the journey. I have duties to perform as a god. Naruko's face lit up with excitement. That's amazing. You just made my day, she laughed. Artemis let out a quiet giggle, sharing in her sister's delight. Why are you being so ungrateful? I've been keeping you company for the past 2 days. And another thing, it isn't even daytime, it's nighttime, you know, Apollo said, lightly tapping Naruko on the shoulder. This only made her giggle, since his response was more comical than threatening. Do you think preparing for a serious mission is a laughing matter? That caught Naruko's attention immediately. Missions like these were never something to take lightly, no matter the world. Apollo glanced at her, letting out a thoughtful sigh. I have full confidence that you and your friends will complete this task, but I still must prepare for the coming challenge. That may require me to cooperate with my father. He trailed off, the weight of the words settling over the conversation. Realization dawned on Naruko, and she quietly gasped at the implications. You mean, we might have to confront them? Let us hope it does not come to that, young one, Artemis said, holding her bow firmly. Do Olympians even pray? Naruko asked curiously. If people prayed to them, then who did the gods themselves turn to? This earned a quiet chuckle from Artemis's brother, now at the tent's entrance. He gave Naruko a genuine look of approval before returning his attention to Artemis. This one, I truly like her, he said sincerely, surprising both Artemis and Naruko. Artemis simply nodded, acknowledging the sentiment, while Naruko tilted her head in puzzled curiosity, unsure why he had said such words. Waving goodbye, the god of music ascended into the sky with a flourish. TSK, he always had a flair for the dramatic, Artemis murmured. If Dionysus hadn't already been the god of theater, my brother might have taken that title. Naruko let out a small sigh, realizing just how much they had relied on him. Oh no. He was our main mode of transportation. How will we travel now? Relax, child of Aura, Artemis said gently, walking beside her. My younger brother may be playful, but he inherited his father's wisdom and skills. You'll see what I mean once you leave this tent. Still uncertain, Naruko shrugged and began to step outside, pausing mid-step. Artemis looked at her curiously. Where did Apollo go? Back to Olympus? Smiling softly, Artemis nodded. Yes, he's going to meet with our mother. I'll join him shortly after you depart. We always seek her guidance before a major undertaking. Naruko nodded, recognizing the respect and tradition in that gesture. Before leaving, Artemis added one more note. That bow, the so-called bow of Hercules. Huh? What about it? Naruko asked. Artemis smiled warmly, glancing at the flashlight at Naruko's waist. Please take care of it. It belongs to our mother, after all. Naruko's eyes widened as she regarded the item with newfound reverence. Wow. I've been entrusted with 2 divine artifacts, she thought. Looking back at Artemis, she saw the goddess shimmering under the moonlight, her silver tunic catching the glow beautifully. Truly, the most captivating things hold great significance, Naruko reflected. Despite her admiration, she could sense Artemis's genuine kindness and honesty, no hint of deceit lingered. I will protect it. I need it to complete my quest, Naruko said firmly, turning to leave the tent, leaving Artemis to her quiet thoughts. Outside, Naruko found her 2 friends waiting, along with a newcomer engaged in lively conversation with Percy. The young man was tall, with curly brown hair, brown eyes, and fair skin, a faint trace of stubble on his chin. As Naruko approached, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, though she couldn't place it. And then we ran out of the tunnel. Percy, it was the most frightening moment ever. The newcomer exclaimed, much to Percy's amusement. At least you saved 2 people from danger, Grover, Percy said kindly. Ah, Grover, the goat-legged friend from that first adventure. Annabeth, noticing Naruko approaching, quickly closed her book, slightly startling the boys, who hadn't realized how absorbed she had been. Naruko. What happened after we left? And where's Apollo? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. He left to prepare for an important mission. After that, Artemis and I discussed how to continue our journey, Naruko replied, thoughtfully rubbing her chin. Though. I'm still unsure how, now that Apollo has left us. Naruko, Apollo's car is still here. We can drive to Los Angeles, Grover suggested, hesitantly. We haven't officially met, but I wanted to thank you for saving both Percy's and my life. Oh, don't worry about it. I was happy to help, Naruko responded warmly, giving the goat-legged boy an encouraging smile. Yeah, but still. Seriously, it's fine. Hearing the calm tone of her savior's voice, Grover knew the discussion was over. While they were talking, the huntress from earlier made her presence known with a sharp glance of disapproval. What's your concern, ma'am? Both Naruko and Percy asked in unison. Men, that's the issue, Zoe replied with a faint sigh before collecting herself. Lady Artemis wanted me to inform you that Apollo's vehicle is only about 2 miles northwest from here. She gestured in the indicated direction and, without checking if anyone had heard her, turned to leave while muttering something in Greek that no one understood. What a peculiar woman. Jackalopes couldn't possibly handle that, Annabeth muttered under her breath, interpreting the comment as an odd observation. So, does anyone here know how to operate that machine? Naruko asked, gesturing toward the vehicle. If you mean the car, I can drive it, Grover raised his hand, volunteering. Since when did you know how to drive? Percy asked, raising an eyebrow. For a while now. I'm actually 30 years old, Percy, Grover revealed. Percy blinked, surprised by the statement. Unlike humans, satyrs age half as fast, so he's more like a 16-year-old in appearance, Annabeth explained, and Grover lowered his head with a sheepish smile. All right then, let's move, Naruko said decisively. Everyone nodded, and the group began walking toward the car. Say, Grover, were you able to help those demigods? Percy asked curiously. Kind of. I couldn't bring them to Camp Half-Blood since they both wanted to join the hunters. So? Can't they be hunters and still be part of Camp Half-Blood? Shaking his head, Grover explained, no, Percy. Once you commit to being a hunter, certain freedoms, like romantic interests and some privileges, are restricted. That seems challenging, Percy muttered. Don't worry, you don't have to make that choice since you're not a girl, Naruko teased lightly, earning an exasperated glance from her friend. She had noticed that the huntresses were all female, so it made sense that only a girl could join their ranks. After about 30 minutes of walking, they finally reached the sun god's car. As they approached, everyone except Grover noticed that Ares' shield was missing, replaced by a backpack with a note on top. Percy grabbed it and read aloud. My mom is alive. And she's being held by Hades, Percy exclaimed, crumpling the parchment in surprise. Don't worry, Percy. We'll help her as soon as we get there, Naruko reassured him. Everything will be all right, Grover added as he placed the keys in the ignition. Finally, I get to drive a sports car. Remember, Grover, easy on the accelerator, Annabeth cautioned. Her advice was interrupted as Grover enthusiastically pressed the pedal, sending the car zooming forward at an impressive speed. Slow down, Grover, Naruko exclaimed, holding on tightly. Grover quickly eased off, and the car continued at a brisk, controlled pace. Sorry about that, everyone. I got a little carried away, Grover apologized sheepishly. Annabeth shook her head, crossing her arms. I said I was sorry, she muttered, but honestly, you all should rest. You'll need your energy. Everyone nodded and began to relax, drifting toward sleep. That is, until a song came on the radio. Grover couldn't resist singing along, much to the group's mild annoyance. Once the song ended, peace returned, and everyone settled in for a long, restful journey. By a lake. After driving through the night and most of the morning, Annabeth suggested a brief stop so Grover could catch up on sleep, even though he insisted he didn't need any. Listen, stubble toes, there are 3 things I can't stand: people who wish to cause trouble, waiting 3 minutes for ramen, and liars. Everyone, even magical creatures, needs rest. So stop pretending you're invincible and take a nap, Naruko said firmly. Grover seemed ready to protest until Naruko cracked her knuckles. I can always help you rest whether you like it or not. With that, Grover promptly lay down on the grass and quickly drifted off. Pleased with her success, Naruko noticed that Percy was missing. He went to take a walk by the lake, Annabeth explained. Naruko frowned and started to follow him, but Annabeth gently held her wrist. Hold on, I know you want to protect him, but he needs some time alone. Yeah, but he's reckless and inexperienced. He doesn't fully understand the challenges ahead, Naruko muttered with concern. That's true, Annabeth admitted, but remember, you were once like him. It's natural to want to protect him, but smothering him won't help him learn the lessons he needs. Naruko sighed, watching Percy skipping pebbles across the water. Reluctantly, she relaxed. "Geez, wise girl, why are you always right?" she said with a small laugh. Annabeth lightly tapped Naruko's forehead, which made her grin. "I just am, Whiskers," Annabeth teased, letting go of her wrist. They both felt a strange emptiness at the sudden separation. Deciding it was more comfortable, they sat down on the grass. "Annabeth, can I ask you something?" Naruko said cautiously. "Of course," Annabeth replied. Naruko took a deep breath. "If you were me, would you forgive Artemis? You probably know more about her than I do." Annabeth thought for a moment. "Honestly, maybe not. Forgiveness is hard, and some choices have lasting consequences. But that doesn't mean you can't choose to see the good in someone." Naruko smiled faintly at this. Annabeth returned the gaze, her eyes soft with understanding. The two sat quietly, watching the calm lake and feeling the gentle breeze. "My mom's alive. All I need to do is go to the underworld, rescue her, and everything will be back to normal." Naruko felt a pang of doubt in her heart. She was about to skip another pebble across the water when a ripple caught her attention. To her amazement, a graceful figure emerged from the lake. Naruko stepped back in awe. "Percy Jackson, I was sent by your father, Lord Poseidon," the figure said gently. "I am a Nereid, a guardian of the sea. The water spirits allowed me to visit." Percy looked stunned. She reassured him that even though it was a lake, the waters eventually led to the ocean. He relaxed. "I cannot stay long," she continued. "Lord Poseidon asked me to deliver this message: go to the ocean before you visit the underworld. We will meet again soon." With that, she returned to the water. Percy shook off his surprise and ran back to the others. When he returned, he saw Naruko and Annabeth napping together, their shoulders leaning against each other. Their heads were close, and strands of blonde hair brushed together. Embarrassed, they scrambled upright and turned away from each other. "I'll wake Grover," Annabeth offered, blushing. Naruko nodded sheepishly, and soon Grover was awake. The group resumed their journey. A few awkward minutes passed before Percy spoke. "While I was by the lake, a Nereid appeared with a message from our father. I have to go to the ocean first." "Did she say anything else?" Naruko asked eagerly. Shaking his head, Percy replied, "No, that was it." "Geez, why is Dad always so secretive? I know he's busy preparing for challenges, but he could spare a few minutes," Naruko muttered. "There's always a reason for the god's actions," Annabeth reminded her. Sighing, Naruko let it go. "Does anyone have a snack?" "I'm hungry," Grover asked, receiving several amused looks. "Let's stop later." "We just took a break," Annabeth said. Percy decided to check the backpack Ares had given them. "Let's see. $20, a pouch of drachmas, and a bag of double-stuffed Oreos," he listed. "How thoughtful of him," Naruko said with a chuckle. She checked the backpack herself but found nothing unexpected and set it aside. The next few hours passed quietly. Annabeth and Percy napped, while Grover hummed along to the music. Naruko gazed out the window, lost in thought, when a soft rustling caught her attention. She reached into the backpack and discovered a single rose. Curious, she gently picked it up and sniffed it. "It smells like a rose," she murmured. She almost put it back, but a warm, familiar feeling filled her heart. "So, a gift from Aphrodite ended up here," she murmured in wonder. The petals had turned a delicate pink, and a sweet vanilla scent filled the air. Naruko's eyes widened in amazement. Crunch crunch. Looking up directly in front of her, Naruko noticed Annabeth pressing a flower gently beneath her ice scraper snow brush. Annabeth's expression was intense, focused entirely on the flower. "Wow, she's really determined to examine that flower closely," Naruko thought. After a few minutes of carefully inspecting and flattening the flower, much to Percy's surprise, Annabeth set the brush back on the car's dashboard and let out a deep sigh while folding her arms. It was clear to everyone that she was feeling frustrated at the moment. Naruko, what did you do to make her react like that?" Percy whispered, leaning over to see the remnants of the flower. "Also, where did that flower even come from?" "Me? I didn't do anything. And the flower came from the bag," Naruko replied. Percy opened his mouth to ask how, but she quickly admitted that she had no idea. "Isn't it obvious?" Annabeth said, narrowing her eyes. "The backpack is enchanted." Apparently, Naruko's curiosity triggered the flower to appear. She paused, clearly annoyed at the unusual occurrence. "Don't you see, Naruko? The goddess of love is interested in you. Annabeth explained, emphasizing the goddess's name with some disbelief. She must have enchanted the backpack so that the flower would appear when someone looked inside. Huh? Why would Aphrodite, the goddess of love, be interested in Naruko? Percy asked, genuinely puzzled. She's probably just curious, that's all, Annabeth muttered, still clearly bothered by the situation. Hearing them speculate, Naruko looked back at the flower. By now, it had vanished. She sighed, deciding it wasn't worth dwelling on, and turned her attention to more pressing matters. So, everyone, how do we even get into the underworld? Do we know where the entrance is? It's actually quite simple, Annabeth replied, pulling a map from the dashboard. We're looking for a building called DOA Recording Studios, which stands for Dead on Arrival. She pointed to a specific location on the map. It's also near the ocean, so we can move between the two areas easily. Yep, and we'll reach our destination in a few hours, Grover added. Hey, Grover, can you talk to animals? Naruko asked curiously. Yeah, I can. I can talk to a lot of different animals, he said proudly. That might be really helpful later, Percy suggested, not quite sure for what yet. Annabeth, however, was already thinking ahead. Remember, Grover, who guards the entrance to the underworld. She glanced at Grover, a slight smile tugging at her lips as she noticed his nervous expression. Grover turned pale and swallowed nervously before speaking. I'm not sure I understand completely. How on earth did I end up in this bewildering adventure? Well, I'll explain. First, I was whisked away by a radiant beam of light that transported me to an entirely new world. After helping 2 children and losing consciousness, I awoke to find myself face to face with a creature that was half human, half horse, who revealed that I was actually the daughter of a god. That sounded outrageous, but I've encountered stranger things before, like discovering that my chakra originated from a mystical tree. Soon after, I met a brilliant and enigmatic girl named Annabeth, who patiently explained the hierarchy of gods and goddesses, known as the Olympians. She kindly offered to give me a tour of the place, referred to as Camp Half-Blood. During the tour, I encountered other demigods and began to understand this new life. The next day, I reunited with one of the children I had helped and took her under my guidance. During a game of Capture the Flag, we discovered something astonishing. Percy and I share the same father, a prominent figure among the gods. After being settled into Cabin 3 and interacting with other demigods, I unexpectedly met my mother. At the time, I didn't realize she was my mother, though now, reflecting on it, I'm not entirely sure what I would have said or done. Perhaps I would have simply asked her about the choices that brought us to this moment. Soon, I received some thoughtful gifts from her, which proved useful for my upcoming quest. Although I've learned much about my new abilities, the reason for my arrival in this world remains unclear. From what I've observed, Percy could have completed this quest alone. Yet after hearing about Percy's recent troubling visions, and the uncertainty surrounding whether Hades truly possesses the item we seek, it's evident that a greater challenge awaits us. As the sun set, we reached a bustling beach. The sight of so many people and exhibits was both exciting and overwhelming. We're finally here, our enthusiastic guide announced. Percy and I exchanged a knowing glance before stepping out of the vehicle. We both understood the task ahead, which required a dip in the ocean. What about the car? We can't just leave it here, Grover fretted. Before anyone could respond, the car sparkled brilliantly and dissolved into millions of tiny golden motes, which drifted skyward like starlight. Naruko watched the phenomenon with curiosity. Interesting. Golden dust seems to follow us wherever we go, she mused. Percy smiled. Well, then let's go enjoy the water. The 4 of us waded to the ocean's edge. What now? Annabeth asked, dipping her toes into the waves cautiously. I was just thinking the same thing, I replied, stepping into the water. Follow me, princess. I couldn't resist teasing her, remembering the long road trip where I'd accidentally called her that. Don't call me that. She protested, though a faint smile betrayed her amusement. I waved before disappearing beneath the surface. Breathing underwater was an entirely new experience. Watching Percy struggle to hold his breath with his eyes tightly shut made me smile. I swam over and gently tapped his back, prompting him to realize he, too, could breathe freely underwater. Wow, I can hear you perfectly even down here, Percy exclaimed. Maybe we're not really talking, I suggested playfully. Perhaps it's some kind of underwater language of clicks and squeaks. Before we could explore this idea further, something tugged at us. Is that a shark? I asked in awe. But the 5-foot-long mako shark wasn't aggressive. Instead, it approached us with an almost pleading look, resembling a loyal pet awaiting a command. Percy cautiously touched its fin, and the shark signaled for us to hold on. Grasping its fin, we were whisked across the water to a deeper part of the ocean. There, a radiant light shimmered beneath the waves. As it drew closer, it became clear that it was a majestic maiden riding an enormous seahorse. The seahorse winked at me before darting away with the shark, as if inviting us to join a playful underwater race. "You have come far, Percy Jackson," she said, turning her attention to me. "And you, even further, Naruko Uzumaki." We both bowed awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. "So, you are the one who spoke to Percy in the lake?" I asked. "Yes, young one. I am a Nereid, a spirit of the sea, and I serve in Lord Poseidon's court," she explained calmly. "Where is our father? Why isn't he here to speak with us directly?" I inquired. A sudden chill rose from the depths below. "Do not judge the Lord of the Sea too harshly," the Nereid replied. "He is preparing for challenges beyond mortal understanding. Gods are not allowed to intervene directly, though they may offer guidance indirectly." I considered this carefully. "So they can still help us in subtle ways?" The Nereid smiled warmly. "Yes. That is why I am here, to offer you both guidance and a gift." She extended her hand, revealing 3 luminous pearls. "I know you intend to venture into Hades' realm. Few mortals have ever succeeded in such a journey. Those who have possessed extraordinary talents. Do either of you have such gifts?" "I can breathe underwater," Percy said proudly. "And control water?" I added. The Nereid nodded and handed Percy the pearls. "You each have abilities that are only beginning to manifest. Keep these pearls with you. When you face a challenge, strike a pearl to receive aid." "What will happen then?" I asked, intrigued. How on earth did I end up in this bewildering situation? Well, I'll explain. First, I was unexpectedly swept away by a radiant beam of light that transported me to an entirely new world. After helping 2 children and briefly losing consciousness, I woke to find myself confronted by a half-human, half-horse figure who revealed that I am, astonishingly, a child of a deity. Quite a claim, I know. But I've encountered far stranger revelations before, such as the notion that my energy came from a mystical tree, so I wasn't entirely flustered. Soon after, I met a stunning yet inscrutable girl named Annabeth, who elaborated on the divine hierarchy, explaining that the gods and goddesses refer to themselves collectively as the Olympians. She guided me on a tour of the camp, known as Camp Half-Blood. During this tour, I encountered numerous fellow demigods and began to understand this world's intricate dynamics. The next day, I reunited with one of the children I had saved earlier and took on a mentoring role. During a friendly game of Capture the Flag, both my parentage and Percy's were revealed. Much to everyone's surprise, we share the same father. Not just any father, but one of the legendary Big Three gods, a figure of immense renown. Following this revelation, I moved into Cabin 3, interacting further with other demigods like Clarice and the children of Aphrodite. Later, I met my mother at the cabin. At the time, I didn't realize she was my mother, otherwise, I might have asked her all sorts of questions about why we had been apart. I received gifts from her, which proved incredibly useful during my quest. A pair of sunglasses, for instance, offered protection against a peculiar woman with striking hair. What was her name again? Medusa? Regardless, the gifts were invaluable. Even with these tools, I hadn't yet grasped why I was in this new world. Percy could have managed the quest alone, but after he confided his unsettling dreams and the possibility that Hades might not possess the bolt, it was clear something extraordinary was on the horizon. As the sun began to set, we approached a crowded beach. I paused, taken aback by the number of people and displays before us. "We're finally here," our overly enthusiastic driver exclaimed, stepping out of the vehicle. Percy and I exchanged knowing glances, then followed suit, stepping onto the sand with determination. "What about the car? We can't just leave it here," Grover worried aloud. "Even in LA, a Maserati isn't exactly ordinary." Before anyone could respond, the car shimmered in a brilliant cascade of sparks before dissolving into countless golden specks that floated skyward. "What's with the gold dust?" Naruko wondered, raising an eyebrow. It seemed to be a recurring phenomenon in this world. "Well, that settles that. Let's catch some waves," Percy said, heading toward the surf. The others followed, and soon we all stood at the water's edge. "What now?" Annabeth asked. I was thinking the same thing as Percy stepped confidently into the ocean. "What are you doing, Percy?" Annabeth asked, carefully testing the water with her toes. Percy ignored her, moving further into the sea. "We're going in," I replied, waiting after him. "Just wait here," Princess. I knew she disliked being called that after I'd accidentally teased her during the long road trip. Spending extended periods together certainly revealed interesting facets of people. Don't call me that, Annabeth shouted, playfully irritated. I waved and then submerged my hand in the water. Being underwater was an entirely new sensation. Normally, I didn't need to submerge myself, but now, breathing below the surface was unfamiliar and intriguing. I glanced at Percy, who was holding his breath with his eyes tightly shut. Amused, I tapped him lightly on the back. His eyes widened, and he gasped, only to realize he could breathe underwater too. Wow, you sound clear even underwater, Percy remarked. Or maybe we're not speaking at all, I suggested. Perhaps we're communicating through strange clicks and squeaks instead. Before we could explore this thought further, a 5-foot-long mako shark approached. It wasn't hostile, but seemed almost playful, nudging us as if inviting interaction. Percy tentatively touched its dorsal fin. It signaled for us to hold on, and we followed its guidance to a deeper part of the ocean where the sandy seabed fell away into a vast chasm. Gazing down, I saw a radiant glow approaching. It grew larger and brighter, revealing a magnificent maiden riding a horse-sized seahorse. The seahorse winked at me before darting off with a shark in a playful chase. You've come far, Percy Jackson, the maiden said. And you, even further, Naruko Uzumaki. I was momentarily speechless, and we both bowed awkwardly. You're the one who spoke to Percy in the lake? Yes, I am a Nereid, a spirit of the sea serving in Lord Poseidon's court, she explained. Why isn't our father here? Is he too busy? I asked. The water around us stirred as a cold current swept upward. Do not judge the Lord of the Sea too hastily, the Nereid replied. He must prepare for events ahead. Gods cannot intervene directly, though indirect assistance is possible. So gods can still guide us quietly? The Nereid smiled warmly. Indeed. That is why I am here, to offer guidance and a gift. She revealed 3 luminous pearls in her hand. I understand you journey to Hades' realm. Few mortals attempt this, and fewer still succeed. Those who do possess extraordinary talents. What skills do you bring? I can breathe underwater, Percy replied. And? I can manipulate water, I added proudly. Sighing, the woman handed over the 3 pearls to the spirited young girl. You possess abilities you are only beginning to understand. For now, take these. When you find yourself in need, place a pearl at your feet. What will happen? Naruko asked curiously. That depends on the need, the woman replied gently. But remember, what belongs to the sea will always return to the sea. Naruko noticed a potential issue. There are only 3 pearls. But we have 2 more people waiting on the mainland. That makes 4 of us in total. I can count, child, the Nereid replied, her voice carrying a hint of mild disapproval. Naruko quickly raised her hands in apology for her unintended remark. As to why there are only 3, the Nereid continued, her gaze steady, it is because you, Naruko Uzumaki, are destined to walk a unique path. Percy's eyes widened in surprise. What? Are you saying she won't be joining us? Naruko nodded silently. But why? She's probably the most capable among us, and we could really use her help, Percy insisted. True, the Nereid acknowledged, her eyes briefly glowing green. I give you this advice, follow the guidance of your heart, or you risk losing your way. Doubt and uncertainty can mislead you. Once you enter challenging realms, it is difficult to leave if you lack faith. Keep your confidence. Good luck, Percy Jackson. She summoned her majestic seahorse. Even more reason why we need Naruko. Percy added, his tone urgent. Shaking her head, the Nereid looked at him with calm assurance. As I said, have faith. Have faith in your abilities, child. Then, turning to Naruko, she instructed, climb onto the hippocampoi. I will explain everything later. You had me at hello, Naruko said excitedly, making the woman tilt her head in mild confusion. I never said hello, the Nereid replied. It's just an expression, Naruko clarified with a grin. Ah, the woman said thoughtfully, I see. I'm still a little puzzled. Never mind, Naruko waved dismissively. Then, looking at Percy, she smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, seaweed brain, you'll manage. Percy nodded, a mixture of concern and admiration on his face. And you? Surely you'll face challenges as significant as ours, Percy asked. Shrugging, Naruko scratched her chin. It probably won't be too bad. I've faced tough situations before. Realizing the sea spirit was patiently waiting, Naruko turned to Percy with a serious expression. Promise me you'll look after Annabeth. Percy raised an eyebrow, understanding her concern. He smiled lightly. I promise to protect her, but don't forget yourself too. You know, friends come first. Naruko laughed, shaking her head, acknowledging that Percy should take care of himself as well. Nodding, she mounted the seahorse, giving Percy one last look before they dashed into the waves, quickly disappearing from sight. Alone, Percy sighed and began making his way back to the shore to reunite with Grover and Annabeth. Naruko, now perched atop a mythically large seahorse, glanced back at the woman, who wore a rare expression of worry. It was slightly unsettling. Moments ago, she had radiated confidence. Now, uncertainty lingered in her gaze. So, this personal quest. What does it involve? Naruko asked cautiously. The woman drew a deep breath. Child of Aura, the mission you are about to undertake is known only to your father, to me, and now to you. Listening intently, Naruko realized the quest sounded as critical as an S-ranked mission back home. Biting her lip, she gave the woman a questioning look. Naruko, you understand that everyone knows Zeus's master bolt is missing, correct? The woman asked. Naruko nodded. What no one knows, except us, is that it's not the only missing artifact. Naruko paused as the realization sank in. Her father's trident was also gone. What? The trident too? How? She asked, astonished. We don't know exactly. But it disappeared around the same time as Zeus's bolt. Unlike Zeus, we know its general location. So why doesn't he retrieve it? Naruko pressed. Frowning, the woman gave her a sympathetic look. Child of Aura, the major deities are restricted from entering each other's territories. Really? Naruko exclaimed. Is it Hades' realm? Then I could join my friends. The Nereid shook her head. No. This concerns Zeus's dominion. Naruko's jaw dropped slightly. But Zeus is aware of our predicament. In fact, this supposed conflict between Zeus and Poseidon is more of a ruse. Each knows of the other's missing artifact. They are clever, but not foolish enough to be deceived by simple thefts. Naruko studied the situation, impressed by the intricacy. So, the point is to make Hades believe a conflict is imminent, while in reality, they cooperate? Exactly, the Nereid replied, impressed by her understanding. But if they swapped artifacts, wouldn't they suspect each other of wrongdoing? Naruko asked. Not quite, the Nereid said. The power of these artifacts can only be fully wielded by their rightful owner. Any misuse greatly diminishes their effectiveness. Naruko laughed at the thought, Zeus struggling with the trident, her father struggling with the lightning bolt. The image was amusing. And the one who benefits the most from both being weakened? Hades, Naruko said logically. It all began to make sense. Then why can't Zeus simply return his brother's trident? The Nereid's face darkened. Naruko felt a shiver of anticipation. He cannot locate it precisely, she admitted, hesitant. What? The king of the gods cannot locate his own artifact? Naruko asked incredulously. The Nereid gazed into Naruko's eyes seriously. There are ancient forces at play, relics from a distant past. Primordial powers are stirring even now. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are only a glimpse of their strength. Do you mean the actual Earth? Naruko guessed. Yes, the woman replied. But remember, names carry power. Names? Naruko tilted her head. No one has spoken them aloud yet. But the word Earth originates from her name, she urged the seahorse onward, clearly eager to reach their destination. To continue, Zeus will allow us to find the trident under certain conditions. What are those conditions? Naruko asked eagerly. We had to locate her master bolt first, she explained with a hint of unease. This required offering a child of Poseidon to assist in the mission, as proof that our intentions were sincere. That is why you and Percy were separated. Wait. Are you saying Percy is meant to fulfill the first condition and go alone into Hades' domain to recover the bolt? Naruko asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the task. She nodded slowly. So the second condition must be that I search for my father's trident in his territory alone? I may be alone, but I am more than capable of handling anything there, she added confidently, prompting the Nereid to raise an eyebrow in mild surprise. I am concerned that your assignment may be even more perilous than your companion's mission, the Nereid warned. Ancient, powerful beings are awakening, and they seem to be gathering in a specific area in Los Angeles. However, you will not be completely alone. For Jupiter's, Zeus's, second condition, one of his children will accompany you. Naruko frowned. Wait, I thought Zeus only had one child. Zeus did have one child, and Jupiter, his Roman counterpart, also has one child, the Nereid replied cryptically. What does that even mean? And why are you calling Zeus Jupiter? Naruko asked, exasperated. They are essentially the same entity, the Nereid explained. Zeus is the Greek name, and Jupiter is the Roman version. That is the main difference. Be clearer, Naruko exclaimed, overwhelmed by the cascade of information. Sighing, the Nereid decided it would be better to simplify. In short, the Greeks had their gods first. The Romans later adopted them with slight variations. For example, Zeus is known as Jupiter to the Romans. The child who will join you comes from a different demigod camp. You mean there are multiple demigod camps besides Camp Half-Blood? Naruko asked, astonished. Yes, the Nereid confirmed. Now, I need you to make a promise, Naruko Uzumaki, do you swear on the river Styx never to share what has been discussed here? Naruko straightened and nodded. I swear on the river Styx to keep this conversation confidential. Satisfied, the Nereid gestured toward the surface. We will reach your destination soon. The child from Jupiter will likely find you first. When he asks for your father's name in Roman, you will respond, Ime o Geos to Neptune. That's Neptune, right? Naruko asked. Correct, the Nereid said, smiling. You understand quickly. Before Naruko could respond, the seahorse broke the surface and then dove back into the depths. Good luck, Naruko Uzumaki, the Nereid called, leaving her alone on the beach. Looking toward the mainland, Naruko was astonished. An immense bridge arched across the sky, and beyond it, clusters of buildings seemed to touch the clouds. Shaking her head in disbelief, she began walking toward the spectacular structures. I'm supposed to meet someone here. But where? She wondered aloud. Above her, the flapping of wings drew her gaze. A winged horse descended gracefully, carrying a young rider who looked about 16. Though youthful in appearance, the boy exuded a quiet maturity. The boy's striking electric blue eyes and tall frame were immediately noticeable. He wore unusual armor and bore a tattoo of an eagle with the letters SPQR on his arm. Despite his stern presence, Naruko noted his charm and poise. Sini s Tatel Tau? The boy asked, his tone firm. Recalling the Nereid's instructions, Naruko replied, Ime o Geos to Neptune. The boy nodded in acknowledgement and dismounted. I assume you've been briefed about our mission? He asked. Yes. The explanation was unusual, but I understand the objective, Naruko said confidently. The boy extended his hand. Naruko mirrored the gesture, and they shook hands. And your name? She asked. Jason, he said simply. Jason Grace, child of Jupiter, Roman demigod, and centurion of the 5th cohort. Naruko Uzumaki, she introduced herself proudly. Demigod of Neptune and a ninja skilled in various arts. She added with a playful fist pump, earning a faint, amused shrug from Jason. You are unique, he commented. Perhaps, Naruko replied with a grin. Now that we've met, where exactly are we? Jason rubbed his chin thoughtfully. We are in San Francisco, beneath the Golden Gate Bridge. Are we close to LA? She asked. Approximately 381.9 miles north, Jason said. Naruko nodded, absorbing the detail. And our destination? She pressed. Jason pointed northward. In the distance, a mountain rose majestically. Mount Tamalpais. There we will locate Lord Neptune's trident. Dear YouTube family. This is all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel to stay updated with more exciting content. Thank you for your support and for being part of this journey. Warm regards. Anime Dreams.